If you were the careful kid, the cautious child who watched before joining, who hated getting in trouble, who always thought twice before doing anything, this video explains what that turns into when you grow up, and how to change it. Here's the short answer, and I'll unpack all of it. Careful kids usually become careful, cautious adults because of an inborn temperament psychologists call behavioral inhibition, a nervous system wired to notice risk first. It's not anxiety, it's not a flaw, it's old software still running, and you can update it. I'm Noggo, let's get into it. You probably remember it, even without a word for it. You were the kid who watched before you joined. At the party, you hung back at the edge, not because you didn't want to play, but because you were reading the room first, figuring out the rules, seeing who was safe. You were the kid who hated getting in trouble, not disliked, dreaded, a teacher raising her voice, even at someone else, sat in your stomach all day. You were careful with your words, careful with new people, careful on the playground stuff everyone else threw themselves off of. Adults called you mature, responsible, an old soul, so well behaved, and you learned to like those words, because they were a reward for being careful. But here's what nobody explained. That carefulness wasn't a personality you picked. It was your brain doing its job. In the 1980s, a Harvard psychologist named Jerome Kagan studied babies just 4 months old. He'd show them something new, a bright mobile, an unfair sound, and they split into groups. Some barely reacted, calm, unbothered, but about 1 in 5 had the opposite response. Their hearts raced, they tensed up, they pulled back from the new thing. Kagan called them high reactive. And when he followed those kids for years, the high reactive babies tended to become the cautious ones, the watchers, the careful kids. So here's the definition, plainly. Behavioral inhibition is a temperament, present from infancy, where the brain reacts more strongly to anything new or uncertain, so the child instinctively holds back to stay safe. And this matters. It wasn't bad parenting. It wasn't something that went wrong. These kids were simply born with a nervous system turned to notice risk first. A more sensitive alarm. And a lot of the time, that's a gift. The careful kid doesn't run into the street. The careful kid feels the tension in a room before anyone else. And the careful kid thinks before acting. Your brain learned one rule early, and learned it well. When in doubt, hold back. Safety beats exploration. Back then, it protected you. The problem is, it never got the memo that you grew up. So what does a careful 7-year-old become? You become the adult who researches everything, which sounds responsible. Until you notice you've researched the same decision for a month, and you're no closer to deciding. If you've ever searched, why am I so indecisive? This is a big part of the answer. You become the adult who waits until you're sure. Sure of the timing, sure you won't fail, sure you won't look stupid. But that certainly never comes. So you wait, and the waiting feels like caution when it's really just staying put. You become the adult who mistakes overthinking for progress, and you become the responsible one. The reliable one who never does anything reckless, and quietly, never does anything risky either, including the risks that would have been good for you. The cruelest part? From the outside it looks like wisdom, so nobody worries about you, not even you. You just carry a low background feeling that you're capable of more than you're reaching for. So hear this clearly. The carefulness was never the problem. It was a brilliant adaptation. It kept a sensitive kid safe in a world that felt loud and unpredictable. If you're the person who reads the room, thinks before speaking, and doesn't blow up their life on impulse, a huge part of that is the careful kid, and you should thank them. The problem isn't the software. The problem is it's outdated. You wrote that code for a world where you were small and the stakes were a raised voice or a scraped knee. You're not in that world anymore. But the program's still applying 7-year-old risk rules to 30-year-old decisions. You don't need to delete it, you need to update it. So here's how to become less scared of risks, without losing what makes caution valuable. 3 steps. 1. Act at 70% certainty. The careful kid waits for 100% before moving. and it never arrives. Decide that pretty sure is enough to act on, and let that last 30% be something you figure out by doing. 2. Treat small risks as data, not danger. Send the text without rewriting it. Say the half-formed thoughts in the meeting. Then watch what actually happens, because almost every time, the disaster your alarm predicted just doesn't show up. That's how you teach an old nervous system that the world got safer. 3. Notice when responsible is really frozen. They look identical from the side. So ask, am I holding back because this is a genuinely bad idea, or because holding back is just the thing I always do? So, the summary. If you were the cautious, careful child, you likely carry an inborn temperament called behavioral inhibition, and it shows up as an adult overthinking, indecision, and waiting for certainty. It isn't a flaw. It's an outdated survival strategy you can update by acting sooner, treating small risks as experiments, and catching when careful has quietly become stuck. You don't actually have to stop being careful. Careful is actually a real gift. You just have to stop letting the careful kid drive. Let them ride along and warn you when it counts, but you have to take the wheel. If you were the careful kid, tell me in the comments, what's one thing your careful kid is still holding you back from? I read every one. If you like videos like this, I'm pretty sure you will like the other videos in this playlist. And you know where the subscribe button is. Take care.